great city-states of Atlantis, I welcome you to the opening ceremony. Brother, you have made a grave error! Do not think of me as your brother, Orin! I am Orm, the Ocean Master.
The episode begins as Vandal Savage appears from a boom tube, informing Phantom Stranger they have work to do. Stranger flicks his cloak and they disappear. At the North Pole, Clarion tells them he is looking for them. The children run out of the bus but immediately return when Dr. Fate breaks free from the ice. Zatanna thinks Child has finished off Clarion, but Clarion is still alive. However, without Tikal, he can only possess things, like the school bus as his anchor. Though Fate and Clarion do not trust each other, they need to work together as they have no choice. Fate reluctantly agrees and they all climb aboard the bus to help Clarion find a new cat. Isis and Ice arrive from the Scarab portal to deal with the pillar as they leave. As the bus travels outside of time and space, Charlie asks if the magic map provided by Fate is correct, and Tracy explains that Fate is good at giving directions. She asks Charlie about the time they spent traveling through time and space. Turns out they have spent 10 years, which Charlie feels like a few hours. Zatanna assures them they will return on their time. Not long after, the bus arrives at the old Salem Animal Shelter to find Clarion's familiar. Meanwhile, Stranger and Vandal Savage stand before the Lords of Order and Chaos. Savage acknowledges that the Lords maintain balance throughout the universe. But he explains that his alliance with Clarion leads to the existence of Dr. Fate, thus maintaining the balance on Earth. He says that Child has destroyed that balance. The Lords speak through Stranger and tell Savage that he is the only one to blame for the crisis on Earth as his alliance with Darkseid made the planet a place for the war between Order and Chaos. Back at Salem, Clarion rejects all the cats presented to him and explains that the cats must choose him, not the other way around. A stray kitten appears and rubs itself against one of the tires. Clarion names the kitten the same name as his original anchor, Tikal, who then gains the marking on its fur. He emerges from the bus and assumes his physical form upon touching Tikal. Fate summons a portal, and Zatanna tells Charlie and the children to stay. She promises to return them home. Zatanna, Fate, Clarion, and the students arrive at the ruins of the Tower of Fate. Zatanna casts a glamour spell to make herself and her students invisible. Fate then conjures a summoning circle. Tikal yowls, but the sound is not enough to summon Child. Clarion conjures an amplifier and Tikal tries again. Child and Flaw appear in the circle. Child mocks Clarion for seeking Fate's help to defeat her, proving himself unworthy of being a Lord of Chaos. Child attacks, but Clarion and Fate easily destroy her flame. Fate and Clarion counterattack, but Flaw only absorbs their attacks, and Child uses it to create a pillar of fire. Mary sucks power from the pillar, sinking it. Child gets distracted by the shrinking pillar, allowing Khalid to attack. He splits Child's body into 4 parts, but as the Lords of Chaos are helping her, it is easy to reconstitute her body. She then removes Zatanna's glamour charm and knocks Zatanna and her students with an energy wave. Meanwhile, Savage explains that his alliance with Darkseid will result in a final conflict, and in case the Earth falls, the anti-life equation will end chaos and the balance will forever be lost. He reminds the Lords of their true purpose, protecting the balance. The Lords agree to withdraw their support to Child, but they will not remove her from Earth, which satisfies Savage. At the tower, the pillar of fire goes out. Clarion knows that the Lords of Chaos no longer support Child. However, Child is still confident she can destroy them with her own powers. She conjures a fire rain. Zatanna creates a shield to protect her and her students, but she needs to maintain the shield as Flaw attacks. Mary draws the power of Zeus to blast Flaw with lightning. Child impales Clarion with a shard from Earth, but the attack doesn't affect him as long as Tikal is safe. In response, Child attacks them with tendrils of energy from her back and ensnares Fate. As Flaw advances, Mary draws more power from the life force of the other students and the forest around them. The birds start to fall from the sky. Tracy asks Zatanna to stop Mary. Mary stops and focuses her attack on Flaw. Tracy then realizes something when Leroy whips her with his tail, seeing Flaw's marking on his chest. Mary manages to push Flaw, but Flaw knocks her out with a rock. Meanwhile, at the Premier building, Perdita visits Garfield. They enter Gar's bedroom filled with mess. Perdita learns that Gar has left Space Trek 3016 and has taken a break from the Outsiders. When she asks if they are on a break as well, Gar gives no response. She also learns that Gar has been taking pills and tells Gar that he is keeping everyone away, including her. When she tells Gar he needs help, Gar dismisses her and says he doesn't. Perdita says how she loves Gar but won't watch him self-destruct. Gar angrily tells her to leave. Back at the Tower of Fate, as Child gains the upper hand, Tracy approaches Flaw and casts a spell at him, causing his Flaw marks to scatter around his body. Flaw shatters and Child gets consumed in magic flames before transforming into her diamond form. She then flies off to the skies. Zatanna drops the shield as the rain of fire stops. Clarion removes the rock shard, leaving a hole in his torso which Tikal happily climbs on. He then teleports away. Fate admits that the students have successfully proven themselves. After putting out the flames from the fire rain, Zatanna leads Mary to a private discussion, away from Tracy and Khalid. Mary erupts in frustration when she learns that Tracy and Khalid will be rewarded, but she is not. Zatanna explains that it was not a reward, and tells her she is not yet ready for it. She says that Mary is attracted to power, without thinking of where the power comes from. Fate notices them arguing and asks what is being discussed. Zatanna explains that her father, Tracy, Khalid, and herself are going to act as Nabu's host for 1 week out of 4. Fate notes that Mary is powerful, but Zatanna insists she is not yet ready. Hearing this, Mary asks to be sent home to Fawcett City. Fate summons a portal and Mary steps through it. Fate agrees, but Zatara must be convinced first. Fate removes his helmet, giving Zatara the chance to talk. He objects to Zatanna's plan, explaining that he took the helmet to save her from the curse. Zatanna notes that he protected her when she was a child, but he has missed her whole life and even his own, adding that she is ready to share the burden of his father. Zatara finally agrees. Khalid takes Zatanna aside and asks why she allowed Mary to do what she did when she would just punish her for it. Or why she allowed Tracy to share their burden from the curse. He then asks Zatanna if the reason for recruiting students was to use them to free her father all along. Zatanna does not respond but approaches Tracy instead. She tells her that Tracy is free to choose if she really wants to do this. Tracy says she is in. Khalid says Zatanna and Zatara need to catch up and Tracy needs to discuss the matter with his father, so he volunteers to take the helmet first. He dons the helmet of fate and transforms into Dr. Fate. At the bus, Zatanna gives Charlie a card with Dinah Lance's phone number, telling them to seek help for the trauma they experienced. Before Fate sends them home, Zatanna casts a spell and touches the bus to see what it went through. As their journey through time and space flashes before her eyes, she gasps when she sees something and immediately breaks contact with the bus. Fate then teleports the bus away back to Metropolis 10 years ago after Clarion possessed another bus. Fate then leaves through a portal. Zatanna still looks appalled by what she saw. When Zatara asks her, the vision of the bus flying through a strange dimension flashes. She hears Connor's voice asking for help. Zatanna tells her father that she saw Connor's spirit. She declares that Connor is not at rest and he needs help. On the next episode, at the Watchtower Memorial Garden, before the newly installed hologram of Connor, Caldurum expresses his grief from Connor's passing. Dick suggests he take a break to take it all in, but Calder refuses, saying he still has to attend a conference in Poseidonis. The next day, Calder arrives in Poseidonis just in time to start the conference. King Orin introduces his cabinet, Mera, Vulko, Undine, Garth, and Calder, and asks the other delegates to introduce themselves: Lord Ronald, Prime Minister Topo, Emissary Coral, King Nano Shark, General Lori, and First Citizen Calvin Durham. Zeeble has failed to send a delegate, which angers Shark, but King Orin assures them a delegate will arrive the next day at the start of the conference proper. King Orin adjourns the conference for the next day, and the delegates start to leave. He then asks Mera to tell her father to send someone. Outside the conference hall, Artur and Logon are playing when Coral arrives and kisses Logon. Orin follows and thanks Logon for watching over his son. Delphis and Shalena arrive and Shalena suggests Calder and Wine tour Delphis around Poseidonis, to which the two happily agree. Meanwhile, in a strangely colored dimension, Connor wakes up after seeing flashes of the explosion and Meg Gann. He calls out to Meg Gann, but receives no response. Their mind link was broken. He then notices an unconscious girl beside him, but he cannot touch her. As they both don't have heat signatures, he begins to wonder if they had passed away. On the day of the conference, Bishop Beluga represents Zeeble, much to Shark's displease. Lori reminds him that there would be more leaders to attend if Nanov stopped slaughtering them. Shark dismisses her and says the surface world's activities eliminate the krills in Nanov's waters, forcing them to take more territory to survive. Back at the strange dimension, Connor learns that both himself and the girl have heartbeats, suggesting they are alive. He also discovers that he can touch the girl if he believes he could. As the mists around him begin to clear, he notices several asteroids floating around him. Violet visits the house of the Dows, who now lives in Happy Harbor. She came to seek answers about Gabrielle's faith, Islam, and if it holds meaning for her. As they prepare a meal, Violet asks about the hijab. Madia explains that people wear hijab for various reasons, depending on themselves. For her, it is a reminder of her faith and that life is short, she needs to strive to do good. Violet asks if it is fine to wear the hijab even if she doesn't know what it meant to her yet. Madia explains that many young girls wear it as a tradition, long before they figure out everything. Back at the conference, the leaders talk about the problems of each city-state like pollution, climate change, and poorly distributed wealth. As King Orin assures them they have viable solutions for all their problems, there is a sudden blast that destroys the conference table and interrupts the conference. It was from Ocean Master's trident. Meanwhile, Connor names the still unconscious girl Ghosty. He needs to get her help, but they have nowhere to go. He then uses his infrared vision and sees a heat trail in the distance. Connor carries Ghosty to follow the heat trail and starts to jump between the asteroids toward the trail. In Poseidonis, with his trident, Ocean Master unleashes a blast of energy that destroys many buildings. Mera conjures a water octopus to stop him but he easily deflects her attack. Lori activates her skin icons and tosses rocks at Ocean Master, but he manages to destroy them before blasting a group of attackers. Coral's husband is knocked on the rubble, and Coral rushes to check on him. Shark tries to stop Ocean Master, but is knocked back. Logon arrives and rushes to his wife and husband's side as Wine traps Ocean Master with Calder's help. Wine tries to maintain the trap but Ocean Master breaks free, and the impact shoves them away. Ocean Master gets blinded for a second as Logon charges at him. Logon strikes him onto the wall before charging with the others, but Ocean Master recovers in time to blast them away. As Ocean Master prepares to attack once again, a powerful energy blasts onto him. He enrages and turns to see a strange hooded man attacking him. Ocean Master is overpowered and teleports out before the hooded man swims away. Danyuth, who is secretly observing the fight, swims away as well. Back in Happy Harbor, Madia now explains to Violet what Islam is and that they have no other god but God. Violet tells her traumatic experience of someone who calls herself a god, Granny Goodness. But Madia explains that God would not do such a thing, as God is many things, compassionate, merciful, and the protector. She tells Violet how proud she is when she turns down Brian's proposal to be his queen. She believes that Violet is on a good path. Meanwhile, everyone recovers at the conference hall, wondering who the hooded stranger was. As they swim outside, Mera mentions the prophecy to King Orin, who tells her to talk about it later. The people of Poseidonis need them. At the Satyroman cave, Ocean Master erupts in anger, demanding to know who was the stranger, but Danyuth doesn't know and tries to calm him. When Danyuth calls him a prince, he firmly says he will forever be Orm, the Ocean Master.
The episode begins at Bibbo's diner, where Clark Kent is asked by two strangers to talk, calling him Superman. When Clark tells them they must be confused, the boy transforms into his alien form and reveals himself as Chameleon Boy. In Poseidonis, Caldurum and Logon report to King Orin that they found no trace of the Orm. Orin questions Orm's attack at the conference, as he has nothing to gain from it. Atlanteans would still not see him as king. Calder implies Orm must have sought revenge for imprisonment, but Orin doubts it. Logon then informs Orin that people at every city-state protest for prioritizing the repair of Poseidonis. Orin explains that the repairs are being paid for by Poseidonis itself, not the Atlantean treasury. He expresses his frustration with how the Atlanteans criticize everything he does. Meanwhile, Connor continues leaping from rock to rock carrying Ghosty. As he follows the heat trail, he discovers it is from a giant eel-like creature, who then attacks him, slashing his back. At the Atlantean royal palace, Mera informs Orin of the spreading rumors about the man who defeated Ocean Master and Neptune's trident. The rumors talk about the prophecy of the one true king, the one who will subdue the trident's threat. Orin doubts the turn of events, saying it fits too well. He suspects Orm of orchestrating the attack to hail the victor as a hero, but Mera points out that the stranger had real power, and strong magic able to defeat Neptune's trident. Orin then orders the widowhood to find the stranger their utmost priority. As Calder talks to his parents about him dealing with the situation at Poseidonis, leading the Justice League, and Connor's passing, Wind calls him outside. They witness a giant pillar of fire appearing outside of Poseidonis. In Metropolis, Superman meets with Chameleon Boy and Saturn Girl in the skies above the city. Saturn Girl suggests creating a mind link to explain everything, but Superman insists they talk. They explain they are travelers from the future, tasked to prevent a disaster, the passing of Superboy, which they managed to do so a year ago, but they failed on Mars. Superman tells them to just go back in time and try again, but Saturn Girl explains their time sphere was destroyed during the explosion on Mars, trapping them in the present time. They mentioned another traveler was with them, but they believe she hadn't made it. Superman doubts their claims and notes that there was no evidence of a second body at the scene. They explain that the last time they saw her was when she tried to save Superboy, but she never returned. Superman wonders how the two Legionnaires returned to Earth without their time sphere. Saturn Girl answers they got help. Bioship appears behind Saturn Girl and Chameleon Boy. Back to Poseidonis, Mera tries to extinguish the pillar with a giant water octopus as Dr. Fate, Satana, and the Sentinels of Magic appear from a portal. As Calder swims with King Orin to aid Mera, he notices Dr. Fate and the others leave through the portal. In the strange dimension, Connor tries to dodge the creature's attack as he leaps from rock to rock while carrying Ghosty in his arms. He puts down Ghosty before fighting back, but his punch only goes through the creature. Connor hides to think and remembers that he needs to believe he can touch the creature. When the creature charges at him again, he manages to land a hit, but the creature falls on Ghosty to his horror. At Poseidonis, Mera conjures a protective bubble to protect herself, Calder, and King Orin. She explains that a new Lord of Chaos, much stronger than Clarion, has created the pillar. She adds that the red waters created by the pillar eliminate everything it touches. King Orin warns the sea life to steer clear of the red waters and makes a public announcement to inform the citizens to stay inside the dome of Poseidonis and to seal the gates. Mera orders Calder to take over the bubble as she concentrates on the pillar. Meanwhile, Blubber calls for help as the red waters approach fast behind him. Inside the dome, Logon tries to go outside to help Blubber, but Wine stops him. Opening the dome would put everyone's life in danger. Orion orders Calder to take him beyond the red waters to save Blubber. He brings Blubber to the other side of the dome safely. From a distance, Ocean Master observes the situation. Back at Metropolis, Superman agrees to help the Legionnaires when he sees Bioship. The Legionnaires explain how Superboy inspired them, and that his passing led to a galactic disaster in their time. To prevent this crisis, they ask Superman to take Superboy's place at Happy Harbor, Rhode Island, at exactly 12 noon, 10 years from now. They refuse to tell further details for fear of disrupting the time stream. In the middle of the conversation, Superman receives a call from Black Lightning telling him to respond to an emergency in Agra. Superman speeds away. Chameleon Boy notes that nothing has changed and a time stream did not reset, which suggests Superman failed. Saturn Girl mentions that this might be because of too much exposure to chronoton radiation. They can no longer tell the changes in the time stream, but she insists they keep trying. Meanwhile, Blubber safely enters the dome of Poseidonis. As Orin secures Blubber, he notices Ocean Master approaching the pillar. He accuses Orm of taking advantage of the crisis, but Orm wants to help subdue the pillar. He doesn't want to rule a lifeless ocean, but he also has no intention of saving Orin from the red waters. Reluctantly, Orin swims away. At the pillar, as Mera ensnares the pillar with a giant eel construct, Orm appears beside her and Calder and offers to fight the pillar together. He fires a beam at the eel, causing it to grow in size and become stronger. At the strange dimension, Connor tries to attack the creature, but the rock only passes through it. The creature charges right onto him and slashes him across the chest. He gets frustrated and is surprised to see Ghosty unharmed. He wonders why is he the only one solid to the creature. Soon after, he realizes that the creature is attracted to his rage. He lowers his hand and relaxes his mind by imagining himself fixing a motorcycle with Meg Gan, Sphere, and Wolf. He calms down as the creature passes through him before it flies away. Though victorious, Connor realizes that following the creature's heat trail leads them nowhere. In Poseidonis, Mera and Orm's eel construct collapses. As they blast the pillar with suppression beams, a third beam strikes the pillar. It was from the stranger who saved them from Ocean Master's trident at the conference. Not long after, the pillar disappears along with the red waters. Logon watches in awe as he mentions the prophecy, to Delphi's confusion. As soon as the pillar goes out, Ocean Master fires at Mera and Calder, knocking Calder out. Mera tries to defend themselves, but her powers are too drained that she cannot conjure a shield. Ocean Master blasts them, but the stranger intercepts the attack and releases an energy blast, snatching the trident off Ocean Master's hand. Orin arrives to arrest Ocean Master, who then charges toward him. Orin takes him down with an uppercut, knocking off his mask. Logon and Wind take Orm away, leaving Orin as he stares at his brother's mask. The stranger approaches Mera and hands over the trident. As he prepares to leave, Mera and Orin ask who he is. He refuses at first, but Mera convinces him. He reluctantly removes his hood and reveals himself as Arion. Mera recognizes him as the First Lord and founder of Atlantis. He corrects Mera, saying he is a failure of Atlantis. Seeing Arion, the crowd begins to chant his name. Delphis, who doesn't know Arion, asks Calder who Arion is, to which he replies as the answer to an ancient question. Meanwhile, in Central City, as soon as Jay Garrick leaves, Saturn Girl and Chameleon Boy ring the bell. Bart Allen answers the door and sees the Legionnaires in their human form, demanding to talk with him. On the next episode, Forager finally meets Baby and says he will miss Bioship. He then asks Megan if she is doing okay. Megan replies she gets support from family and friends, though it is hard to deal with Connor's passing. Forager then asks if she has seen Garfield personally, but Megan says Gar must be busy with his shoot on Space Trek 3016, with the Outsiders, and with Perdita. Forager informs Megan that Gar has quit the show, has stopped going on missions with the Outsiders, and has broken up with Perdita. He suggests Megan should see Gar. At the Posidonis Science Center, Arion is surrounded by instruments for the tests to check his magic. Orin and Mara stand beside him while Volko and Blubber prepare for the test. Embarrassed, Arion offers to withdraw his claims, but Orin tells him they must know the truth, so he reluctantly agrees. Mara asks him to perform any kind of magic. He conjures an illusion of his younger self. Blubber informs them of the results and says that Arion's magic residue is unique, which Mara refers to as an ancient kind, older than they ever encountered. Blubber says that his DNA also matches those of Vandal and Cassandra Savage, an indirect confirmation of his identity. Blubber jokingly says they can have a direct DNA test if they recover Arion's crown, which may contain hair follicles. Mara asks Arion if he knows where the crown is, but Arion only knows that it sank along with the city of Atlantis and is most likely buried deep beneath Zeeble. Later that day, Arion looks sadly over the window, seeing the crowd from all 8 city-states chant his name. Chien approaches him and asks him to speak to the crowd. Arion tells her how he never wanted to cause such commotion and that he would slip away if he could. Orin discusses the rioting in Zeeble with Mara and Calder as they swim together. With the recent events resonating with the prophecy, Orin orders a covert mission to recover the lost crown of Arion in Zeeble under Calder's lead. He believes the crown will settle the prophecy and the current situation of all of Atlantis. He shows a scan of the Zeeble's sea floor from the watchtower, revealing a pocket ocean beneath which is believed to contain the ruins of the lost city of Atlantis. Orin orders to conduct the mission under radio silence as the search for the crown could further escalate the situation. At the premier building, Megan visits Gar, who is furious about her calling Perdita. Megan explains that they are both just concerned about him. She mentions that he promised to get help when they get back on Earth, but Gar says that only a stranger diagnosed him, which he could hardly trust. Megan diagnosed him with depression and possible PTSD. Gar recites its symptoms but still refuses to acknowledge that something's wrong. He tells her how he handled the loss of his loved ones, and it's no different from losing Connor, he can deal with it alone. Megan tries to convince him once more, but Gar refuses and walks off, leaving her. At Posidonis, Logon bids goodbye to his wife and husband. He promises to be back before Coral gives birth to their child. Meanwhile, Wind reminds Calder to slow down, but Calder insists he is fine. Since Winda is coming with him, he will ensure to see if he is right. Delphis enters and asks to join the mission, but Calder refuses. At the prison cell, Orin visits Orm, who insists he has no idea who Arion was, but Orin says he came not to ask him about Arion this time. He asks Orm how long he has hated him, but Orm refuses to recount the past since Orin has visited him 16 times during his previous 6-year imprisonment. Orin appears surprised but leaves without saying anything. He later meets with Mara and Blubber to have Ocean Master's mask DNA tested to see if the Orm in the prison is his real brother. He then leaves the kingdom's hands to Mara as he sets off beyond the city gates. At the premier building, Megan arrives with Jamie, Virgil, Cassie, and Robot Man to conduct an intervention. Gar seems uninterested. They try to remind him of his feats as the leader of the Outsiders and want him to go back as the Gar they once knew, a friend and a mentor. Gar coldly dismisses them. As King Nereus addresses the crowd of protesters at Zeeble, Calder, Wind, and Logon enter the kingdom unnoticed. They head to the Grave of Legends where they come across a head of a statue that looks exactly like Wind. They begin to drill at the thinnest layer of the sea floor above the undersea while the guards are distracted by the protest. But as they continue, a group of guards approaches. Back in Arion's room, Chien enters to inform Arion of the unrest at Zeeble. When Chien tells him to restore peace, he insists they leave it to the current leaders of Atlantis. However, Chien notes that the people will listen to no one but him. Arion finally agrees and decides to talk to Orin, but Orin has already left the palace. Chien offers to sneak him out despite Orin's orders for Arion to stay in his room. Meanwhile, Orin arrives at the 9th Tribe and knocks at the door of an algae bar. Someone answers the door and attempts to intimidate Orin. But Orin has brought a shiver of lemon sharks, allowing him to enter the bar and approach Danuth. Back at the premier building, Robot Man emphasizes the help Gar got from Rita, Megan, and himself when his mom passed away. He reminds Gar of the optimism he always keeps despite mourning his loved ones, but Gar casually invalidates him. Meg bitterly asks if Gar is having fun and says how easy it is to push people away rather than deal with his problems. She emphasizes that Gar is not the only one grieving and she needs him, his brother. Gar firmly says he doesn't want to be needed anymore. He will deal with his problem alone, in his own way. As he walks away, Meg reminds him of the annual mental health checks, and if he wants to keep his superhero life, he needs to attend a one-on-one therapy session with Black Canary. At the Grave of Legends, the guards draw closer to Calder and the others, when a blinding light grabs the guards' attention. The guards turn around to follow the light. Delphis appears and joins the team as they break through the sea floor. They reach the undersea. Delphis provides the light to guide them along the way. The tunnel starts to collapse, causing a cave-in. They swim deeper as Calder drills through another barrier. Once their safety is assured, the group begins to explore in search of King Arion's crown. Meanwhile, Orin returns from his visit to the Ninth Triad. He tells Mera that the Orm currently in the prison cell is not his real brother. The Orm in prison mentioned Orin visiting him 16 times. Orin visited Orm 16 times, but never spoke to him. Orm's former lieutenant, Danyuth, also confirmed his suspicions. Orin suspects that Orm's arrival and Arion's appearance are not a coincidence. He wants to speak with Arion, but Mera informs him that Arion has disappeared along with Chian.
The episode begins at Orm's prison cell in Poseidonis. King Orin visits Orm, who insists he is not a clone. Orin brings Miss Martian, camouflaged, to ask for her opinion on whether Orm is telling the truth. Miss Martian confirms Orm believes what he is saying. Orin urges Orm to think if the memories from his incarceration are real, mentioning Orm's memory of Orin seeing him that actually never happened. Orm refuses Meggan's help to clear his mind and insists he is not a clone as Orin and Meggan leave. At the Kingdom of Zebel throne room, Vyus, Shark, Lori, Mera, and King Orin gather to discuss the crisis as the crowd chants Arion's name outside the palace. Ryus wants to arrest Arion, but it would only escalate the situation and Orin says it would be too late to salvage it. Their conversation ends up in an argument, prompting Mera to intervene. She reminds them that Arion has done nothing wrong and may even be the one true king, but without Arion's crown, there is no definitive answer to the prophecy. To amend the crisis, Orin calls the conference of the delegates. Those who are not present attend via video screens: Calvin Durham, Topo, and Ronald. Carol is in labor and has given Topo her proxy. Mera is confused. Topo and Calvin explain the election of the new High King. Just then, Arion and Chian arrive. For weeks, Calder, Wind, Logon, and Delphis continue the search for Arion's lost crown while learning how to defend themselves against the threats of the undersea until they face a giant crab monster. The crab monster sucks them toward its mouth. Wind tries to counter the flow by creating an opposite current. As the others swim away, Logon goes with the flow toward the crab's mouth and grabs a stone pillar before getting swallowed. The pillar jammed into the crab's throat, and the crab spits Logon out before disappearing. As the crab swims off, Delphis notices a huge fissure from where the crab appears. The fissure leads them to a deeper part of the undersea where they discover that the ruins of Atlantis sank deeper throughout the years as the sea floor shifted. As they swim deeper, Wind's skin icons light up, suggesting a source of powerful magic is near. The rest soon senses it, allowing all their skin icons to light up. They spread out to pinpoint its location. Their skin icons lead them to a certain location. Wind casts a current to look for the crown, which later emerges on the sea floor. Calder picks up the crown, but they suddenly hear a roar from a nearby tunnel. A huge, scaled creature appears, the Leviathan. At the prison cell, Orm calls out for Orin, but Miss Martian appears and offers to help Orm, who finally agrees. Miss Martian enters Orm's mind and immediately recognizes Simon's mind touch. She then brings Orm to his first true memory where he awakens in a pod. Vandal, Savage and Ultrahumanite are in front of him, discussing his progress. Savage wants Simon to erase Orm's first memory as he saw their faces. Orm then remembers waking to see Savage confirming the transfer of the original Ocean Master's memories to him before Ocean Master's incarceration. Now that everything is set, Savage announces Project Thrynos to commence, ordering Simon to release Orm. Simon then opens the opposite pod where a clone of Arion awakes. In Zebel, the delegates deliberate the election of the High King. Arion says he never wanted to be the king but notes it may be the right time to resume leadership in Atlantis. Mera objects, saying that Atlantis already has a leader. But the delegates and the prophecy are all against her. Mera urges Orin not to allow Arion to be the king, but Orin notes that he is not a dictator and calls for a vote in favor of Arion. Orin then declares Arion as the new High King of Atlantis. Back to Orm's memories, he remembers seeing Savage talk with Arion's clone, saying they were able to produce a clone from the DNA obtained from Arion's flute. It is revealed that Savage implanted Orm's memories into Aerion's clone, who now has stronger magic. He is tasked to pose as Aerion to assume the throne of Atlantis after defeating Orm's clone. Orm's purpose is to get defeated by Aerion's clone to fulfill the prophecy, making it easier for the people of Atlantis to accept him. Orm's clone gasps as he pulls out of memory, looking shocked and horrified. Meg-Gan feels sorry for him but rushes to report to Orin first. At Undersea, Calder and the others dodge the Leviathan's attacks. Calder launches a harpoon onto the creature's back and tells everyone to get aboard. He then uses an electric shock, causing the creature to swim upwards toward the top of the Undersea. They then jump off from the Leviathan as it approaches the ceiling. The impact creates a small hole, where they escape, trapping the Leviathan beneath them. They emerge near Zeeble and start to swim into the city. On their way, Logon asks to inform Orin through the radio, but Calder reminds him that they must complete the mission in radio silence. Suddenly, several halo screens start popping up all over the city. Aerion addresses the people and claims to be reluctant in accepting the High King's title. In Poseidonese, Vulko and Beluga watch the broadcast on a screen while Calvin and Shalena watch inside their home in Shaeris. Back to Zeeble, Aerion personally addresses the crowd. Orin receives a call from Meg-Gan, apologizing for the late intel and suggesting Orin go public with the intel. However, Orin thinks no one would believe him. Aerion suddenly sees Calder and the others swimming up to the palace. He summons the crown into his hands, but Orin tells his brother not to wear the crown. Aerion furiously replies that they were never brothers before declaring the prophecy is fulfilled as he wears the crown. The crown begins to glow as the Lords of Order witnessed the event in the heavens. Orin notices something is wrong, just as Aerion realizes it. Aerion screeches in pain as the crown disintegrates his body. A bolt of light leaves the crown and shoots up to the skies and onto the Lords of Order. The crown sinks to the floor. Everyone watches silently in horror, unable to process what happened. Mera checks the crown and says it has been drained of power before showing it to the crowd. She declares Aerion is not the true High King, with the crown denying him as proof. She adds that Orin is the true High King before giving him the crown, but Orin refuses to accept it and tells her it is wrong. He removes the crown before announcing that Mera fulfills the prophecy and explains that Mera was one of those who faced the Red Waters. The prophecy states the one who emerges best is the one true king, and he asks if anyone questions it. As the crowd chants Mera's name, Orin calls for a vote from the delegates. All unanimously vote for Mera, but she is reluctant to accept. Orin explains how Mera was born to be a leader, unlike him, who was raised in a lighthouse. Mera finally accepts the crown and addresses the people of Atlantis as the new Anax. Under her reign, she promises to unite all 8 city-states and the Atlantean people. Everyone, including those watching in Shaeris and Poseidonese, starts cheering for their new Anax. Later that day, Calder asks Orin what he plans to do next, now that he relinquished the throne. Orin says he plans to support the reign of his wife, raise his son and rejoin the Justice League. Logon and Wind arrives. Calder offers to return the title of Aquaman to Orin, but Orin declines, saying that the League can accommodate 2 Aquaman, like how they have 2 Flashes and 4 Green Lanterns, or even 3 Aquaman, as he turns to Logon, who is shocked to hear his return to the League. Calder congratulates him and says that the timing is right before announcing he is going to take a leave of absence. He turns to Wind and kisses him. As Savage picks up Aerion's flute in the Warworld storeroom, Dr. Fate appears behind him and tells him not to be surprised that the Lords of Order did not allow his agent to use their power in his own will. While raging inside, Savage calls them fools as he believes bringing Aerion's clone to Atlantis would bring order to 3/4 of the world. But Fate tells him the chaos he unleashed at Atlantis has finally come to an end. He opens a portal and leaves while Savage snaps the flute in rage. Meanwhile, Meg-Gan has finished cleansing Orm's clone from any trace of Simon's programming. Orin releases him and gives him Ocean Master's mask, saying that he is not responsible for the crimes committed by the original Orm, or the crimes he committed under the light's influence. Orin tells Orm he is welcome for another chance if he wishes. Orm swims away from Poseidonese while Mera sits on the throne with her son Artur on her lap, and her husband, Orin, beside her. Meanwhile, Logon happily cradles his newborn baby beside his wife and husband. Calder and Wind are relaxing on their couch at home while Dolphin sits nearby. In the strange dimension, Connor tells Ghosty that he failed her, even Meg-Gan, as he remembers the explosion and the ring melting into the lava. Memories from his past life that are full of violence and rage rush into his mind. Suddenly, he hears a strange sound and sees a school bus flying overhead. He screams for help as the bus disappears into a portal. As he slowly loses hope, Lex appears behind him and touches him on the shoulder. Lex utters his old command phrase, "Red Sun," while staring down at him. On the next episode, Raquel Irvin takes her son Amistad to Noble Davis, Amistad's father. Noble reminds her of Amistad's IEP, but Raquel dismisses him and says the school just doesn't get how intelligent Amistad is. Noble notes that Amistad is diagnosed with autism and needs some help, but Raquel is not ready to discuss it. She says goodbye to his son before leaving for a mission. Aboard the Javelin in space, Raquel, who is lost in thought, is interrupted by Jay Garrick as they approach New Genesis, where they will be attending a summit between the Justice League, the New Gods, and the Green Lantern Corps. They then receive a transmission from Orion, welcoming them to New Genesis. He instructs them to follow Lightray to Supertown where the summit will be held. When they arrive at Supertown, Lightray introduces himself, Hi Father, Hi Mother, and Orion, the Dog of War, which sounds questionable to Raquel. As the Leaguers are welcomed at the landing port, Antinos arrives at the secure warehouse with a shipment of spent crystals. Captain Celestia briefly examines the shipment and lets him pass. Inside, he offloads the crate, but as he leaves, something opens the crate from the inside. A forager bug emerges from the crate and starts to dodge the patrols in search of something. She searches several crates until she finds the device she has been looking for. After a warm welcome from Hi Father and Hi Mother, Orion and his guests fly on hover pads across the city. He is leading them toward their quarters as the Green Lantern Corps will not arrive until the next day. Orion's mother box alerts him of the unknown technology of Rocket's belt. Orion demands to take it for study, informing them it was the protocol, but Hi Mother dismisses him and reminds him that Rocket is an honored guest. He then withdraws the request. As the bug attempts to escape, she bumps into Captain Celestia, who informs Orion of a theft at the warehouse. At Apocalypse, Gragan stands on a table inside a bar and urges his fellow Hunger Dogs to revolt against the new gods of Apocalypse, but no one dares to do so for fear of being re-educated, except for a girl who follows him outside. The girl asks Gragan about what he said at the bar and Gragan takes her to where the others are. Back in Supertown, Orion activates his hover platform and booms to the warehouse with Rocket, despite his reluctance to let her join. They arrive in time to see Celestia in pursuit of the bug, who jumps off of Supertown and lands in a lake. Rocket and Orion go after the bug, but the mother box is unable to pinpoint the thief's location due to radion particles in the area. Rocket conjures an energy bubble around her and Orion to take them underwater and follow the thief. But Orion immediately demands to release him, which she did, allowing the thief to escape. After the failed capture, the new gods and the Leaguers examine the photo of the thief, whom Forager recognizes as a female. Lightray explains that the stolen item was a 1,000-year-old radiant-powered ruction cell, which can be dangerous. To find the thief, Orion suggests searching the nearest hive to the lake, but Forager says that the thief bug is from the mountain hive based on her markings. At Apocalypse, Gragan takes the girl, Jovita, to a remote building. A moment later, they are ambushed by a group of parademons. Gragan transforms and reveals himself to be Malefic. He has been searching for rebels to bring to the re-education center. Graven praises him for his work and informs him that Darkseid is pleased and wants to see him. Graven opens a boom tube. Malefic follows, glad that what he's been waiting for is finally happening. Inside the mountain hive's tunnel system, the blue thief forager shows how the crystal can power their hive. The rest of the hive starts to praise her until a red forager announces the arrival of the new gods outside. The adult bugs start to rush outside, but the blue thief entrusts the device to two larvae for safekeeping. She goes outside to join the adults in meeting their guests, Rocket, Flash, Forager, Orion, and Lightray. Orion tries to locate the device but the mountain is radiant blocked. Flash offers to check the hive at speed, but Orion says the High Father is against entering a bug's hive without permission. As the bugs emerge from the hive, Orion declares the purpose of their visit, to retrieve the ruction cell. Allwidow and the other adults pretend to know nothing of the device. Inside, the larvae get distracted by what is happening outside, allowing the camouflaged Malefic to tamper with the device. He inserts something into the cell before slipping away unnoticed. Meanwhile, the outsider forager explains to the blue thief forager that the cell is dangerous, but the blue thief forager doesn't believe him and accuses him of forgetting what it is to be a forager. Outsider forager tells her that if the cell explodes, she will have no hive anymore. To protect lives, Orion prepares to go against Highfather's rule and search for the ruction cell, but the Blue Mountain forager steps in and offers to take them to the cell. Unbeknownst to them, the larvae take the cell away, believing that forager will be happy. As they run, the cell begins to malfunction. Meanwhile, Connor is hallucinating himself working for Lex, doing everything Lex wants as his son, eliminating Batman and destroying the Watchtower. Lex praises his son and orders him to shed his useless attachments to reach his full potential, which refers to Ghosty, who later turns into Miss Martian in his arms. Back on Apocalypse, Malefic is brought to Darkseid. He asks Darkseid if the promise will be fulfilled since he has done what was asked, but Graven gives him one more task to perform in Darkseid's will. Graven orders Mantis to bring the Kaiser Thrall and speaks to someone, who he says to be watching them. A camouflage time sphere appears, revealing its pilot. Graven orders Malefic to follow the pilot's orders as if it was Darkseid's. With Mantis and the Kaiser Thrall, Malefic boards the time sphere and asks the pilot who he is. The pilot answers, Lor Zod, before camouflaging the time sphere again. The search for the larvae continues as the larvae take the cell into the forest. The red larva drops the cell as it malfunctions, and the blue larva worries they might have broken it. The red larva accidentally flips a switch and the cell blasts a nearby rock, destroying it. The blue larva picks up the cell and starts destroying trees while the cell's indicator lights turn red. Meanwhile, the foragers, Orion, and Rocket see the energy beams being fired and rush the source. Orion orders the larvae to return to the cell, but they refuse. The cell malfunctions and ends up blasting Orion, knocking his helmet off and the motherbox. The cell discharges energy beams uncontrollably and Rocket creates an energy bubble to protect them. The blue forager and Rocket ask the larvae to leave the device, but Orion suddenly attacks them, knocking them away from the device. The Rocket moves her energy bubble around the cell, and warns the others it will not hold for long. As Orion punches the bubble, Rocket traps him inside another energy bubble, causing him to go more berserk. Just then, Flash arrives with Light Ray and immediately takes the larvae to safety. Light Ray tells Rocket to release Orion and explains that Orion is claustrophobic. Holding him inside the bubble for too long will cause irreparable damage. Rocket is reluctant, but the cell discharges a powerful energy, breaking Rocket's containment. The impact knocks Rocket and the others off their feet, causing her to release Orion. Light Ray immediately grabs the mother box, which constantly pings, calming Orion. Orion takes the mother box and apologizes for what happened. The Ruction cell is then handed over to Metron for safekeeping at his interdimensional vault. Rocket watches Orion, who is talking with High Mother in fear of being just like his biological father. What worries Rocket the most is her upcoming negotiations with whom she calls a monster, Orion. In the strange dimension, Lex continues to convince Connor to leave Meg Gann and Ghosty when an unfamiliar man appears beside him. The man looks just like him, miscolored, and tells him that he is hallucinating, a symptom of the zone sickness. The man assures Connor that he is real, as Connor has never seen him before. He points out that Ghosty is also real, and anything else is just a hallucination. He offers to help Connor, then asks his name. Connor answers in his Cadmus-programmed voice, the Superboy. The man then introduces himself as General Druzad.